So, hello, my name is Giancarlo. I'm the technical specialist for South Europe at Autodesk. I'd like to talk to you first a little bit about Maya Update 3. There's a few new things that we've done for the latest version of Maya. Have you seen the latest version of Maya yet? Have you seen anything on the web or beforehand? No. How's your English? Good. Okay, I'll be slow then. I'll try to be slow. So just gonna start. So one of the things that we've done for the latest version of Maya is now that we have dockable shelves. So now we can dock and undock the shelf. We can place them anywhere we like. We have much better docking highlighting, and we also now have a new scripting we call the dash scripting. And all we need to do is go to the channel box and we input the command that we want to input in there, and then we can do things like duplicate, among other things. Now, another thing that got much better now is the content browser is now much faster, so much better performance now. On the modeling side, we have improved immensely the overlay on the drawing mode. So now when you do your live mode, you can see it's much nicer looking. Now you don't see any interpenetrations between the models and the actual model that you're painting. We have multi-cut interpretability now, so we also added some new hotkeys. You can see it's Control Shift to do the quad draw, and Control Shift X to do the multi-cut. But the multi-cut is a lot more responsive now. When you make live, that's what we used to see before, where you see where the model will cut through. That's when you already turn it into a polygon. That's what you see, but you can adjust it, the threshold, and then you get a much nicer result there on the modeling side. One thing that's very exciting now for MASH is on the motion graphics. Now we have a live link to After Effects. So we can now export cameras. On the cameras, we have X-forms, focal length, aperture, sum, and all the stuff we can export directly into After Effects. We can also have the ability to export spotlights, ambience, and all of this information is going to translate really nicely into After Effects. So as you can see, X-forms intensity, the color cones, noise, and all this stuff. So I'm going to try to rush this presentation because I want to focus on to Arnold, which is the most important part for us, Arnold 5. But also on the motion graphics side, we have the type in SVG extrude node now are multi-threaded. It means that they're really fast now. They got really fast and spike-free also, so less jagged and edges and stuff like that. We have a new procedural text generator, so we can control via Python. And the loop curve warp deformer, it's now much nicer. So we got a new 0 to 1 full revolution, which means it's been optimized for this. Okay. And MASH, have you seen MASH networks? If you haven't seen any about Maya MASH, so MASH is the latest motion graphic tool set that we have in Maya. And it would be nice to see a lot more about MASH though. But then what's new on the MASH side? Now we have this world natural clustering ecosystem, so we can create ecosystems like as Vue, for example. Have you seen Vue before? Pretty much like Vue, so you can paint, you can create your ecosystem within Maya. You can also place interactively any objects like with a brush, so you can just go and click and place any objects that you like. And you can also use ID, so you can have multiple objects and just place them around. So it's pretty nice. On the distribute node, we have new center and voxel options, so that's something really nice we didn't have there before. Time node, we have a whole frame and random time scale. I'm sorry if you haven't seen this. I kind of assume you have seen Maya a little bit before. So we have a few nice things there on the orient node. Now it's multi-threaded as well. But since you haven't seen this, I'm just going to skip this part. So on the UV editor side, we have done a very nice overhaul to the whole interface. It's not pretty much everything's new. As you can see, we have new menus. Marking menus has been improved a lot. Shell shading, great customization. We have better checker display and improved distortion shading as well. But you can see there's a bunch of new tools now. All these screens that you can see here on the menus, it means it's new. So there's a lot of new tools here for the artist, and we can make their lives a lot easier now. Seems like auto scenes for UV shells is something that was new there. Now we can do the 3D cuts, with the cuts in actual 3D viewport, so we don't have to do it in the 2D viewport. Symmetrized UV is also new. We have a layout UV packing for packing algorithms. I mean, there's so many new things that we have now on this side. Animation playback now in Maya update 3 2017. We got 64-bit tick rating support, so we have high key precision and precise time code. That means now you have additional frame rates, which you can import and it'll be inherent to your new scene. So if you have a different scene, you import your scene with your frame rate, it'll gonna come to your new scene exactly as that. So if it's 23 or 24 frames per second, it'll stay like that in your scene, regardless of your frame rate on that particular scene. So it's gonna translate really nicely. Now we have this frame rate drop down as well. And on the rigging side, we have a few new improvements. So we have high show control for objects on the quick rig. We have a tension deformer, which is pretty nice. I think we saw it before on the Max presentation, and the delta motion improvement as well. So it's the same deformer but in Maya. And we also have baked deformers. On the X-Gen side, clump modifiers. So now we can clump curls and coils for hair and fur. We have collision modifiers that interact with meshes, so you can have your hair and then have any other objects interact with this X-Gen. But the good thing is now when you're combing your hair, when you're grooming your hair, because you have a glider set to this mesh, it won't cut through. So it's a lot easier for you to style your hair and work with X-Gen now. So integrative groom. Now we have the ability to convert any groom we do in X-Gen, we can convert it into polygons, so we can then take them into our games. And we also added this twist brush, so we can then align the geometry and have an easy way to see exactly how geometry needs to be in order to look good. Then on Bifrost, have you seen Bifrost? Any of you? You don't seem to be a Maya guys. You haven't seen following Maya much. Anyways, but Bifrost is our fluid system, and we have now added initial states. So now you can, say freeze your simulation in one particular frame and then start from there. So that makes it a lot nicer for you to control certain things. We also have much better result when we set up multiple kill fields, and when we have a field that we're working, say, with forces like wind, turbulences, and so on and so forth. And then we can add what we call the kill field, and we can have multiples of them to control this fluid. So now it works much better on this version of Maya. We have some extra velocity controls for the fluid, and we have new sample scenes as well. And finally, on the Viewport 2.0, we have native support for Open Subdivision 3.1, which is the latest Pixar subdivision surfaces. Displacement preview. Now we can see the displacement in the viewport, which is really nice, something we didn't have before. Also ambient occlusion, screen space ambient occlusion, and shadow support for our open subdivision. Some complex shading areas also look good on our display on the Viewport 2.0. Says like grams, file textures, and multi-tile UV. So if you're working with UDIMs and so on and so forth, it will look as expected in your viewport. Then HDR and EXR for sky domes are now visible in the Viewport 2.0. That's been asked for a while now, and finally we got that working. We also have support for point lights, which we didn't have before. Alpha cut transparency mode, so transparency modes work much better now in Viewport 2.0. And scope guide to performance have been improved by a lot. And as you can see here, we have a 10K displacement map working in the actual viewport, so it's kind of nice to be able to see, these high-resolution maps working in the actual viewport. So that was just a quick overview of what we've done for Maya on the update 3, but what I really wanted to do was to focus on Arnold 5. Now we have release 5.0.1 just to address some bug fixes and stuff like that. And I'm just going to go through a workflow update and what's new. We already seen on master presentation what's new with Arnold 5, so I'm just going to skip on that part a little bit. I'm just going to show you how the integration works in Maya. So just going to play this quick video. Sound.
Starting with Maya 2017, Maya users will find that Arnold is now your default interactive renderer and can be found in the render settings as well as in a variety of other locations with your Maya tools. You'll see Arnold integrated in the material view along with translation of Maya materials to Arnold, native support for efficient.tx files, render setup, and a lot more. Maya users will now be able to utilize the Arnold render view, which brings incredible new live render functionality that updates in real time with every scene change, including lighting, materials, camera, and much more. It will take your lighting and rendering work to amazing new levels as you iterate faster than ever. Maya's powerful Viewport 2.0 now also supports Arnold, with nodes represented in VP2, streamlining workflows even further so more work can be done ahead of rendering. The result? Better looking images even faster. For more information on Arnold and Maya 2017, visit www.autodesk.com/Maya.
Okay, so what I want to do now, I just want to go into a live demo mode. So I'm just going to open Maya, and I'm going to show you what's the workflow, how we work with Arnold 5 in Maya. So I'm just going to go to that. Get behind the wheel. Yeah. Okay, so just give it a minute. There you go. So I'm just going to open a first scene here, and it's a very simple scene. So I just want to show you how we integrated Maya, Arnold into Maya. So you can see I just have a car with 3 area lights here. But first thing you see in green here is the Arnold menu. So if you go here, you have your render view. You can hit render directly. You have your render view. You have standings, which you're going to cover later. You can create your lights here. You have your curve collector, which we're also going to see. Volume, so you can handle your open VDV data, which is open source from DreamWorks. And then we have the ability to flush cache for textures and stuff like that. And we have a bunch of utilities that we're also going to cover. So I'm just going to pretty quickly just going to go and go to the render settings. And I'm going to show you how this looks. Once you open Maya on your render settings, you see you have your Arnold render tab. If you go there, one of the beauties about Arnold is it's so easy and simple to use. So why so simple? Because it's got very fewer controls. We don't have really as many controls as any other renders, like for example V-Ray or RenderMan. We made it very simple for the artist to be able to control it much faster. So the setup time is a lot faster. So you can see we only have camera AA, which is anti-aliasing samples. We have then the diffuse samples, which controls the diffuse indirect bounces. Then we have specular, which controls specular indirect bounces. Transmission will be controlling things like transparencies, you know, so on and so forth. Then we have the SSS, which means subsurface scattering. Volume indirect is just to do volumetric scattering and that sort of samples that. Then we have things like clamping, and clamping is being used sometimes when you have very bright lights and very bright refractions. You get what we call the fireflies. Fireflies are just one white dot, or you can have multiple white dots, and one of the ways we can control them is by clamping the value. So you don't allow the whites to go too bright. So you just tell Maya, okay, I just want to clamp this, and I'm going to set the max value to something like 1. And then that's how simply you can control your you know, things like fireflies and stuff like that, which is what are artifacts that come with the render. Then we have your typical filters, as you can see here. So you have a bunch of them, but the one we always advise people to use is the Gaussian one. Things like ray depth is where you're going to control your indirect bounces, indirect specular bounces, so on and so forth. Then we have the environment. Here's where you can control or you can add things like volumetric effects. Then you can add some other effects, and like in the background, which is, you can see is legacy. That's where we used to add things like IBLs and stuff like that. Not anymore. Then it's as simple as we have motion blur. What you just need to do is enable it. Then we have the keys, which means how many steps are Arnold going to use to calculate that motion blur. So we always advise to use just 2 because we don't need more than that. But you can, if you have very, very clean but not so faster to render motion blur, you can add more steps. Then we can control things like the lights. In this one, we have what we call the low light threshold. This one, what it's going to do is just it's going to find out which light is not really contributing too much to your scene, and it's going to kill that light. So it makes your render go a lot faster. And then we have this other menu here, which is the texture, which is the one that's going to be controlling how Arnold's going to convert all of the texture files into TX files, which is a file that is a bitmap version of Arnold, which is going to be more memory efficient and a lot faster to render. So now these options got multi-threaded, so it's a lot faster. I can advise you to keep it on if you're working locally. But if you're not working locally, I would advise a lot of people just to turn it off and just go into the Arnold menu, into the utilities, and go to the TX manager. And if you already have your textures locked down and everything is being approved by the director, all you need to do is just go here, find your scene texture folders, go grab your textures and convert them manually. So that way you don't have to keep converting your images. And say you have like multiple 8Ks or 4Ks textures, then it's a lot faster for you to convert them beforehand before you even start working with Arnold. So that's the workflow we use now. Then we have the system. And what the system gives us here on this render settings is basically things like, okay, how are you going to render this? It's going to be interactive, or you want to export it as an AS file to later on do like a kick render. And kick is our like DOS system just to render AS files. And then you have the bucket scanning. It's the way, you know, the pixels are going to be drawn in the actual render view. So you have ways of doing from top to bottom, from left to right, you know, that sort of thing. So I always try to use it on spiral because it looks much nicer. And then the bucket size is how big this bucket is going to render. You know, so the size of that particular bucket. So I always keep it to a minimum, so it gives me a much faster feedback when I'm doing interactive renders. So, and the last thing we have here in the render settings is the AOV. So AOVs are arbitrary output variables. That's the name of that. And then we have, we can add things, for example, if you go into the built-in, things like normal passes, we can add that. We can have point passes to calculate then, you know, position pass, for example. RGBA, we can do our set pass to calculate, you know, depth of field and stuff like that. We can do it later on in the comp. Then we can do things like diffuse albedo, diffuse indirect. For example, we can extract things like specular channels. And we're also going to be using the AUVs then to later clean up the noise that comes in our renders. So these are the guys that we're going to be using to find out where exactly a noise might be coming from. So it's very important for any lighting artist to understand how this stuff works and why we need to use AUVs. Just so it seems like a lot, but it's actually a lot less than a lot of other renders, so it's very simple to use. So that's on this side. So now if I go and hit my Arnold render view, and I just open my Arnold render view and I hit play. Okay, what I have on the Arnold render views is a bunch of things that is really nice to have. So for once, I have what we call the debug modes, and in the debug modes we have the ability to see things like just basic lighting or just a basic shape. Then we have just lighting, so we can see how the lights are contributing to the scene, but just the lights, we don't want to see any textures. We can also evaluate only things like ambient occlusion, and then we can also create AOVs, like custom AOVs, and change things like you know, samples on this, the distance, search distances for the ambient occlusion node. We also have the ability to see wireframe, which is very nice. Obviously, on the render, sometimes the directors will ask you to have a wireframe render. This is the way you can capture that. And another thing that's really nice about the debug modes is the ability to see the normals. So a lot of the times you get objects from artists that have inverted normals and they don't render correctly. So this is the way we know, okay, how, and we can actually fix these normals in the actual Arnold render view. So you can see now, just gonna go to my mesh display. I'm gonna attach that. And I'm going to reverse the normals. And as I do reverse the normals, it gives me this different, like purplish color. That means they're not looking into the right direction, so they're not really going outwards or towards the camera. So that way I can just, if I find an object that is not really good, I can just click on that in the actual Arnold render view. As you can see, I also have the ability to move around within the Arnold render view. So I can just go and find whatever object is not correct, select it there, and just go and reverse it back. And that's all fixed. So that's another way we use these debug modes here. We can also see things like UVs or check to the IDs from the primitive object. We can see only object IDs. And this is very useful because there's a lot of plugins that you can find out there. Things like, for example, Primat, and there's a few others. Cryptomat, for example, from Alan Sanders. And they're very, very nice to use in order to, clean up your scene. Sometimes you're getting brighter results in one particular shader that you want to fix it in the comp. You don't want to really take the time to do it in the actual 3D package. And then the last thing, and which is the most important one to me, is the ability to isolate a selection. So now I can isolate, say, for example, a light, and I can see exactly how that light is contributing to my scene. So I can tweak that particular light only. So when you're doing your look development process in your studio, it's a lot faster for you to do it. So I'm just gonna go and open the node editor, and to me this is the fastest way to work with your shader. So I have a kind of a say medium complex shading network, in which I have a bunch of things. So what I like about the debug mode, I can also select things like a noise, for example, a procedural noise, and then I can either concentrate on one part, like selecting this marquee region here, and I can just start changing things like the amplitude, for example, and just tweak the shaders and get the results a lot faster because I can see it interactively and in real time as I am working. I also have things like an AI theme film, which is our use. This is a very complex area to do very complex specular reflections. Things that you will find in bogs, for example, on oil spills, on bubbles, for example. This is the type of specular reflection that you will be using. And then I can start, just checking things. For example, I have what I've done here for this car is just basically I did your typical double paint in which the color of the car is going to change depending on the angle that you see it. So for that, what I used is now Arnold have more than 80 new utilities. So I have used the facing ratio one, and I connected that to the V coordinates of a ramp, and that way I can tell okay, depending on what angle I'm seeing this guy, I wanted to change the color. So how am I doing that? So the white represents one shader and the black represents another shader. So what I've done is just I connected these to a mix shader. So the mix shader basically has two shaders connected to it, and they have a mix weight. And the mix weight is basically the ramp. What's controlling the weight is the ramp. So as I go to the end of the shader, and I get out of my isolate select, I'm just going to go into my shading mode. You can see I'm going to rotate this. And as I rotate the camera, that orange color is going to follow the camera. So I get that really, really nice type of effect. And it's very straightforward to set up. And as you can see it in real time, it makes it a lot faster for you to do your development work in your studio. Also, you can give instant feedback to your director, which is nice. And another thing that's really cool about this Arnold view is the fact that you can see your passes in the actual view. So you can see things like normal passes, or point passes, or position passes to then calculate your motion blurs. You can do your set passes, or you can see things like your albedo only, or diffuse indirect, which in this case I don't have any, or just a specular color. And you can see I can isolate a lot of the passes, and I can add custom ones, and I can create my own ones. I can do live path expressions, so I create, really custom ones. And I also have the ability, obviously, to see, the channels, and, so on and so forth, and change my, exposure and things like that. And for comparison's sake, when I'm working, say I'm doing some tweaking, and I'm gonna go back to my beauty. Okay, so I now have this. I have the ability to take a snapshot, so I can take a snapshot of what I'm doing, and then if I go and tweak things, like for example this noise, and I, change that or get rid of it, then I can compare the two, but just flicking back and forth. Obviously, I have to kind of go and finish the render for me to see this better, but you can get the idea. And the fact that you can see it pretty nicely like that, I mean, it's really good. So that's it for the integration. There's a lot of things that you can do with Arnold within Maya. So I'm just gonna keep open a few files that I have here. Next one's gonna be the light changes that we've done for this version of Arnold. As you saw in Mesa's presentation, now our area lights have the ability for the specular reflection, so we can tell it to be a little bit more round, or we can soft the specular reflection, which is something that has been asked for a long time by a lot of people. So now we're just giving it to a lot of the studios, and really happy. So as you can see, the specular reflection here that's going for the area light, which is a rectangular area light, it's obviously going to be a rectangular reflection. So all I need to do in order to change that, before we could only do things like, okay, I'm just going to turn it into a disk. It was either a disk or a quad. So now I can keep it quad and just add a little bit of roundness to it. So I just go and change the slide like this and add a little bit. So maybe I just want to keep some, some square to it, but not much, and just can keep adding to that. So you can see I can go halfway or all the way and get it, really nice circular reflection. But I now also have the ability to soft the edge, so it's not really hard. So as I, tweak that slider there, you can see I get a much softer result here, which is very nice, for a lot of people. A lot of people has been asking for this for a very, very long time. So we do appreciate having this now. And okay, so there's a lot of other things I could probably show you. Things like in light, you can, you have the ability to tweak channels independently. So if I want to have only specular contribution from that light, all I need to do is just bring this diffuse slider back to 0, or just add a little bit of diffuse. It's the same with the specular. So if I go all the way down, all I'm getting is this diffuse contribution, so on and so forth. So that's really nice to have. And then at the end we have the light filters, and the light filters, you have the ability to add light blockers and light decays and stuff like that. So basically you can tell the light, okay, I want you to die at this distance, or I want you to start from this distance on. And so this is also really nice to have. And I'm just going to go to the next scene that I have here, which is the overrides. So Arnold overrides, what Arnold override does is just give you the ability to have a set of objects or a set of lights and control them independently, and add different attributes and control them independently on that particular set. So in this particular case, what I have is a bunch of cars or dreadnoughts, and then all you need to do in order to control them and certain attributes is just select whatever you want, and just the attributes you want to have control, and just go and create a new set. So in this case, I just call it, like you can see here, I already created one and call it cars. Say I'm going to call these dreadnoughts, and I just hit apply or whatever. So in this case, just going to close it because I already have it created. So on the Arnold menu on the right side, you can see I have the override, and I have a couple of options. I can remove or I can add. So I'm just going to add, and when I do this, I get a huge list of things, which is ordered alphabetically. So it's very easy for you to find, because it's obviously going alphabetically, but you can also type any attribute you want to find. So for instance, say I wanted to find diffuse, so all you need to do is just type diff or di. If you click enter, and it'll give you whatever is starting from there. So I have my displacement pattern, for example, or displacement type, or so on and so forth. So I already added a few of them there. So in this case, I added things like motion blur or primary visibility. I also have added like AI matte. So if you wanted to create your specific mattes for any objects, you can do it here. And things like casting shadows or have it visible to the camera on the reflection, things like that I can control. So if I go and hit render now, you see I have all of these cars, but what this gives me is the ability to say, for example, turn off the primary visibility on all of them. So I don't have to go and do it one by one, so which was the regular workflow before. So you would have to go or create a script with a for-in loop in order to achieve this total result. So now all you need to do is just create the set and control things like that. Then you can also turn off things like casting shadows. Maybe I don't want an object to cast a shadow or things like that, or I don't want that to be visible to reflections, or maybe the other way around. So only be visible in reflections, but I don't want it to be there at all. And then if I do the AI matte, for example, if I turn that one on, so see, on, what it gives me is just a matte. So I can have like a black and white, let's call it, just a mask, basically. This is what I get from this. That's also very nice to have for multiple reasons. Maybe you want to extract only your shadow information, but you want to have a matte of your character and stuff like this. So that's the way you normally would do it in production. Okay, so let's go back to RGB. And then you cannot just only control things like objects, but you can also control lights. You can also control shaders, multiple shaders or multiple lights at the same time. So in this particular case, I created this other 4 lights here, and I put it into this new set, which I call lights. And then in this particular case, I added things like exposure or the number of samples that I want to control on these ones only. But you can do things like specular, for example. So, but if I say I want to have a bunch of lights and all of them to be controlled, have a different color, maybe all I need to do is put them on the set and then control the amount of intensity that they're gonna have. And it's very, very straightforward. So this is a really nice feature of Arnold that a lot of people don't know is there, and it's very important also in production. For when you're working in any real production environment, this is something that you're going to find yourself doing a lot. So now next one's going to be rendering curves. So there's 2 ways that we handle curve information in Maya M2A or Arnold for Maya. So because there's so many packages used nowadays, for example, you can do your hair systems in Houdini or whatever you want, or maybe just sculpt them in ZBrush. And all you want to do is just extract that information and bring them back into Maya and render it in Maya. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. So in this particular example, what I've done is just extracted the dreadnought. I extracted some lines there, and I have them here under this group. So there's a lot of curves. So all you need to do in order to render them, if you hit render, by default it's just not going to show up. So what you have to do is you have to select all of them like this, right until the end, and just go to the Arnold menu, and you have this option here, which is the curve collector. So that's one way of doing it. So if I click here, what it's going to do is it's going to create a node which is the curve collector. It's going to put a copy of all those curves into there. So what I get from this, and I'm just gonna, for a minute, just gonna hide this other ones. So what I get from this node is, if I go to the shape, it gives me things like the mode. So I can control the mode. I can make it thick or as a ribbon or oriented to the camera. For example, I can change the width, which is basically how thick that curve is going to be. Then I can also change the profile. So say I want the curve to be like sharp. I want at the end and or at the beginning, and it also sharp at the end. I can control this with this nice ramp here, and that's something really nice to have. And you can only have it with a collector. You cannot do it on the any other way. So you can also control things like sample rate, and sample rates will control how many points you have. Okay. So I'm just gonna hit render on this one so you can see how this looks. So what I've done is if I connected a shader to these curves, and when you connect the shader, you get you have a bunch of presets. So what I used in this one was this incandescent bulb, which mimics what a light bulb would do in real life. And so that's what I have here. Because I only have 3 minutes, I wanted to show you, how to create standings, which is really nice, OpenVDB data and all that stuff. But I think I'm going to just skip all of that, and I'm going directly into faking some indirect lights bounces. This one's really important because a lot of people have been asking, how can you make Arnold go faster? Because Arnold is not really a bilinear render. It only calculates light for one light source, basically from the camera. So it shoots rays from the camera, and that gives Arnold, information how to calculate bounces and stuff like that. So any other renders like V-Ray would be bilinear. It means it takes information also from the light sources as it does from the camera. So a lot of people have been complaining about that within Arnold, and there's ways in production that you can, work around that. So in this case, I have set up a scene, and I'm gonna go into my perspective camera. You see, this is something that I downloaded from the website, from our website, and our solid angle. So it's gonna hide all of these lights. And when you download this scene, all you get is these three lights, this directional light, and you get a sky dome light. And when I hit render on this scene, basically it's just showing you the result you're gonna get. Okay, let me change the camera for a minute. And the camera is gonna be in render camera. Sorry. Okay. So now I'm gonna go into my render settings. And this render at these resolutions, you can see it's tiny, so 600 by 338 pixels, with 10 diffuse samples. It takes about 14 minutes to render. So that's where you get a really nice clean render. That small takes you 14 minutes. That's no texture information whatsoever. So imagine you have specular reflections with indirect diffuse bounces, indirect specular bounces, and on top of all this stuff, it has to be an HD or maybe a 4K frame. So that's going to take you about 5 hours more or less to render. So in certain productions, that's a huge no-no. So you have to think about your budget. So how we go and do this, we just basically take the ray depth count back to 0, just like that. So what that gives you, obviously, 0 bounces, and that doesn't really look natural. So one way you can cheat this is by creating, faking those indirect bounces. So if you understand how light works, the light's gonna come from this direction. That ray is gonna come in, and it's gonna hit the surface. Then it's gonna bounce back into multiple directions. So how I fake this is just I create multiple lights. So I'm just gonna hide them now, and you see I get pretty much the same result. But this, instead of rendering in 14 minutes, it renders in 49 seconds. And I get pretty much the same result. It's not super physically accurate, but you get the same representation and the same kind of look for, much less time and a lot less money. So that's something really nice. So so I can prove this point, I just want to, pretty quickly open. I'm going to go to the Finder. I'm just going to go open those files, which I have in here. And renders. So I can show you the actual render time, the way it went. So this one's the one that took 49 seconds. And this one's the one that took 12 minutes and 24 seconds. So you can see how nicely you can fake these type of indirect bounces in no time, and have your director being super happy because you're going to save huge amounts of money. So that's the type of challenges that was against while I was working for different productions for Disney. At the time, like 5 years ago, 3 years ago, we had all this stuff. We have the ability to do indirect bounces, but we didn't have the budget. So we had to keep all of our renders, HD renders, under 10 minutes, and it was almost impossible. So we all wanted to use indirect bounces and all these nice little toys. We were not able to do it, so we came out with different ideas on how to do this. So we do this stuff, but we not also do this stuff, we also created different ways to fake it by using different nodes. So in this particular case, in order to achieve the contact shadows, all we needed to do was to connect an ambient occlusion node to the actual diffuse channel of the shader. So by having that connected to the diffuse channel, I could fake those shadows, and I could also connect a texture. So if I wanted to have this color change to say red, for example, I can change that there, and I could render a red scene with some ambient occlusion there. So it doesn't matter how you tackle it, you're gonna get a really nice result in no time. So I guess that's it for me. I hope that was interesting. So this is how we use Arnold in production. So thank you.